Good morning and welcome. Patriot Radio News Hour. I'm Joe Jaquint, CEO of the Patriot Trading Group, and our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. And welcome one and all. It is Hump Day Wednesday in Jason. Absolute pandemonium. Panic has broken out. We've been watching this slowly. Last week we had the Bank of Japan. Then it was the Bank of England. This morning, complete and utter chaos in these bond markets. In England, the Bank of England has announced massive quantitative easing. So just an about face from quantitative tightening to quantitative easing. Gold is flying right now, up almost $30 and rising. Silver's higher as well. The bond markets are absolutely shell-shocked. And Jason, this does not bode well right now, obviously, because of the infusion of money. And we're talking massive infusion from the Bank of England this morning. We got to start with it. Dow's up a couple hundred points, but again, that's just more on money creation and worries now, or thoughts at least anyway, that the Federal Reserve is going to have to stop its quantitative easing and stop its interest rate hiking. This is the classic definition of this inflation super cycle, Jason, that you and I told everybody these banks were in.
Yeah, at some point there will definitely be printing from the Fed. I just don't know when. I still think they have a lot of inflation to cap, and I don't think they will lower rates and start printing until they see some sort of lowering on the inflation. But maybe they know something we don't know, Joe. Maybe the inflation rates.
I'm going to tell you right now, that's wishful thinking on Wall Street. These guys have been out of touch. They're clueless. Listen, I've been asking you to call my son because I want to help you out there. Now I'm telling you, you better do it, because the next major leg down is coming. 602, 909, 9048. Whatever money you don't get, put into gold and silver, make sure your position, it doesn't cost you anything for him to at least tell you, hey, you've got it right, or know what, you don't have it right. Get it right, because I'm going to tell you right now, rates are headed higher and a lot higher. And in this next segment, we're going to play two clips. One, Stan Druckenmiller, who him and Jeffrey Gundlach, these are the guys you need to pay attention to. We're going to play him. Then the guys on CNBC this morning talking about what happened with the Bank of England. And I'm just going to lay it out for you really simple, because it's not complicated. The Bank of England, Jim Cramer will say, oh, they panicked. They didn't panic. The bond market was collapsing, period. Banks were going to go under. Margin calls in the tens and hundreds of billions was about to break loose. Now, most of us were asleep, so you didn't see it. But let me tell you right now, we had mortgage rates well above 7% early this morning. We had a 10-year note above 4% early this morning. The British 10-year note, and I'm not kidding, was getting ready to go to places people couldn't even imagine. They were talking about 7, 8, 9, even 10% in a single day if the Bank of England hadn't stepped in this morning, Jason. And again, they're whitewashing it. They're trying to have people think everything's okay. This is not business as usual. This is not going to end very well. And even I'm going to give you in the next segment one of the guys that I view as somebody that needs to be paid attention to. He's talking recession, and Jason, he goes, I'm not ready to make it my base yet, but something far, far worse. This isn't going to be this garden variety. So not only is he saying forget about soft landings, he's saying we're going to be in recession, and it's going to be a nasty one, and it has the potential to get really nasty.
Right, Joe. I mean, if the euros are going to be bought up and printed up, and if they're going to buy up pounds and they're going to buy up and print up yen, then these currencies will get crushed more and more. And then I guess, like we talked about before the show, I guess this could create a situation where then when things crash and burn enough, then the Fed could come in and then start lowering the rates, start printing money, bring the dollar back down. And I guess they may be the bought some more time on this scheme they've got.
I don't know. It is, but again, we're at this situation now. Any little misstep causes panic. It happened. Look at in England, and the misstep really was twofold, right? The Bank of England only raised rates by 50 basis points, and I say only. But then the government panicked and introduced all of this extra spending, and then sent the whole thing into chaos. And we're going to see this play out over and over and over again. I don't know if you woke up this morning yet in Phoenix. Have you driven by a gas station lately? Have you seen what gas prices have done? I told you, up 40 cents a gallon in the last 3 days. And by the way, big crude draw this morning. Inventories, gasoline, distillates, crude. Jason, the perfect storm is here.
Yeah, no, it's this has been setting up for quite a long time for a really bad situation, and with what's going on all the way through, the reset, so to speak, is coming. The digital currency, Joe, that's really the end game.
That's the end game, right? How do you get digital currency everywhere? Through the currency everywhere. 800-951-0592. Gold's up 25, 16.52. Silver's up 30 cents. The Dow's up a couple of 100 points, but not for a good reason. The bailouts. Listen, we know about equity bubbles. Heck, we know about housing bubbles. This isn't what we're talking about. This is the biggest bubble of them all. The bond market bubble. Major intervention spreading now across the globe. It started with the Bank of England. Bloomberg's now reporting South Korea has jumped in, buying billions of dollars of their sovereign debt. Taiwan also is jumped in. China is jumped in. Indonesia, Japan, and India are now all outright intervening in these markets to try to prop things up. And guys, this is just, Jason, this just isn't going to end well.
That's right, Joe. I was having some conversation with customers in the last bunch of months, talking about how all of these asset classes are all having a bubble problem. And in the past, there was ways of jumping, we'll just pretend they're all ladders, these asset classes, and when one's going down, you just jump off onto the other ladder, maybe staying the same or going up. And this really looks like a situation where all the ladders are falling all at once, Joe.
Yeah, it's just nuts. Joey's number again, 602-909-9048. Get your portfolio fixed and do it now, because this won't last. Think about what I just said. Pretty much now, I'm sure we are doing it as well. They're just not telling us. But every major currency in the world now is being intervened by money creation from their central banks in the midst of the worst inflation the world has ever seen. See what the problem is? This is a net zero gain. This actually makes the problem worse. It fixes it for today. It fixed the crisis for today. The problem is it creates more crisis down the road on top of what they're already trying to stop. So it really is, it's death by suicide. It's just a different type of suicide is the way you've got to look at what's happened today. First, I'm going to play you, Jack. Let's play the second clip I sent you, the Kramer clip. This was CNBC this morning. talking about what the Bank of England did. Of course, now remember, this is before all those list of countries I just gave you also had to intervene. Jack, let's play it.
You're watching the news this morning, trying to figure out what to make of it. From the Bank of England, figuring out what's happening, not just in bond prices, but in the futures markets.
Well,
Jim, you got any explanations?
It's a radical movement. I mean, if you watched Frank Holland this morning, at around 5:05, it did feel crash. Mm-hmm. You had a feeling that it was pretty much the end of the NASDAQ, which had been the only area that's been holding up. And that was before the Bank of England, I would say, panicked. I won't say that they had a considered thought about what to do. But the interesting thing is the reaction to the 2-year. And the 2-year, David, said basically that the Fed has completed. And I'm not so sure that's an accurate depiction.
It certainly wouldn't seem to be what Jerome Powell's been indicating,
right.
or many others. But as you said many times, and you guys report on this as well during your show, the 2 years seems to be dictating where we go in the market right now.
Right, and I think people were surprised because it's been on the move. 4.5, people expecting 5. Mortgage rates continue to go higher. And maybe there is maybe a crescendo moment where people say the Fed is cognizant that they could destroy the economy and that maybe that's not their goal.
Right. I just think, it's all different amounts of half blinks, quarter blinks, maybe how many eyes do, there are animals with a lot, maybe one blink out of 1,000 eyes. That's like what we want. I want to be chased. I want to tackle inflation. But as strident as they were about transitory, I don't want them to be so strident about going up another 300 basis points if the patient really can't be resuscitated.
Yeah. The transition is always hardest, isn't it? It's like once we get there, we'll be fine.
Right, but mortgage rates have doubled.
It's the trip that is being...
Mortgage rates have doubled.
Mortgage rates 7% 2 weeks after crossing 6%.
These are all lagging things that we're going to see the effect of. So the UK messed up fiscally by tax cuts. Those are stimulative. We've messed up fiscally here by continuing all this student loan, whatever you want to look at. Are we in a position?
Yeah, cut it right there. Cut it right there. So you get the gist, and this is what why I'm telling you, get ready. Because the only thing that Wall Street is clinging to is somehow the central bank is just going to stop. Hey, you know what? We're going to end quantitative tightening. We're going to stop raising interest rates. Listen, we've got an inflation print coming out in a couple weeks that's going to be 8+%. This is just the absolute fallacy that this is going to be the plan. I've been telling you from day one, there's no such thing as a soft landing. This thing is only going to end one way, and that is a depression. I've been saying it all along, and whether or not they want to call it a recession really doesn't matter, Jason. This is really indicative of what is happening right now in all of these marketplaces. They started it out while the Bank of England panicked, but you heard what he said right before that. The whole thing was getting ready to collapse this morning. So I guess if your portfolio hasn't been fixed yet, you better be grateful that the Bank of England panicked this morning, Jason.
Right, Joe. The term that you were using a lot, but you haven't used it as much lately, is demand destruction. I think they won't. That'll be part of the stopping of the inflation if they can get to that point in the future. This is why I think they're going to keep raising rates. These guys, I don't think they really understand. They just don't understand that if inflation's out of control, the Fed has no power. The Fed can actually be removed or replaced if they don't stop inflation in a reasonable amount of time. So they act like, well, do they care about the markets? Do they not care about the markets? Well, they cared about the markets in recent situations because they could lower the rates to zero and print. They just can't do that with this inflation. I don't. It's kind of basic, Joe. It's not like I know less than you, and I know less than some of these guys that purport to know this stuff. But the Fed has to not let inflation get it. Weimar Germany is a reason why the Fed is empowered to do what it does, is to stop inflation. Whether they cause it and they enrich themselves on it, all that doesn't really matter. If the inflation doesn't get under control, the Fed will go away. So they have to do whatever the games are playing, Joe, by doing these low rate hikes. I think is buying them time. I think these other currencies are crashing. I think with the repo money and the reverse repo money, I think they can actually use this as a slush fund to like buy them some time. And then if they can't stop the inflation, if there's a worldwide emergency, then they can blame the inflation on that. That's what I see, Joe.
This is a dangerous, dangerous day. Very lucky day. We were probably setting up for a $4,000 down day if the bond market blowout that was occurring at about 5 o'clock this morning went any further. I have no doubt in my mind banks were getting ready to go under. You got to understand, they're in these markets. Who's on the other end of these trades, and that's where the problem lies. Who was on the other end of the British 10-year note, the British 2-year note? Who was on the other end of the pound sterling trade or the euro trade? I mean, the euro was down to like 94 cents this morning and getting worse. These are all the things, and again, any little mistake now is going to be magnified. And if the one thing that the central banks have proven, they're absolutely clueless about what is really happening in the marketplaces. But before that, Stan Druckenmiller was out and updating what he sees coming. Jack, let's play that clip.
I will be stunned if we don't have a recession in 23. Don't know the timing, but certainly by the end of 23. I will not be surprised if it's not larger than the so-called average garden variety. And I don't rule out, not my forecast, but I don't rule out something really bad. Why? Because if you look at the liquidity situation that has driven this, we're going to go from all this QE to QT. We're following an asset bubble. We've been doing all this running down on the SPR, which is now, that's the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. It's now below 84 levels, even though obviously oil consumption is much higher. We've had a bunch of myopic policies that have actually delayed the liquidity shrinkage. QT has been almost entirely offset by Janet Yellen running down the Treasury savings account. By the way, pretty amazing policy. She could have sold 10 years for under 1% during this time. Instead, she runs down the Treasury savings account. So all that has masked the liquidity shrinkage, but it really comes into full gear. And she can continue this for a while. We can do the SPR for a while, stimulative stuff. But by the first quarter of 23, it kind of goes the other way. So our central case is a hard landing by the end of 23, but I don't know. I've been wrong on a lot of things. I could be wrong on this, but since I do it for a living, that's our forecast, which is a recession in 23.
All right, right there, Jack. So I want you to, let's highlight some things. Let me explain some things. Pretty amazing policy with his words. What he meant by that was, what an idiotic move from Janet Yellen. So the Treasury has built up this money. The Treasury has the checkbook. Well, they built it up. It was well over $1 trillion. And instead of filling it up with cheap money, she's run down the checking account. In other words, not going back to the market to borrow. And Stan Druckenmiller says, listen, that's getting ready to end. Right now she's going to be borrowing at 4%, 5%, 6%. Who knows how bad it's going to be. She's making the problem appear to be much better than what it is. Again, same thing with the Strategic Oil Reserve. How long have I told you about this? This make-believe fantasy policy they pulled on all of us. That's getting ready to end. So Stan Druckenmiller said, listen, they were doing two things to fool us, and fool us in a big way, and those things come to an end, and now he's talking about hard landing, and you can hear it in his voice. Hey, I'm not saying yet that it's going to be a really, really hard landing, but you could tell that he thinks, Jason, this thing's probably going to be a lot worse than what he's even saying right now.
Yeah, I mean, recession at the end of 2023, I mean, he's being kind of optimistic as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think what he means by that is what we warned about yesterday. When does these layoffs start, right? He doesn't know the exact timing. When does it get really bad? You know,
right.
We're already
what I'm
in
saying,
the
Joe, is
technical
he's shooting way
definition
short.
of recession.
He's just shooting way short, Joe. You've got a way more peg than he does. What I'm saying is great piece. He's right in some respect. I think he's shooting way short of the target. You know, you've got it pegged much closer to what it was really happening. I mean, this is a recession. It's 2022. A GDP should be negative this quarter, you would think, right, Joe?
Listen, we've lost $30 trillion of wealth so far. And obviously, we built this huge wealth bubble. That this is to be expected. But believe me, this is something where this is on a knife's edge. I mean, we have had, what is it, a dozen countries at least admit this morning that they're intervening in these markets because this is going to be chaotic. This is how it happens. This is when I talk about it all the time. How do you go bankrupt? It's gradual at first. And then it's sudden. And that's what was happening this morning. It was going to be sudden, and they had to rescue it in. It just delays the inevitable. We'll be back after the break. 800-951-0592. $20 gold right now, $2,010. And then $5 gold, the $5 Liberties. 1866 to 1907. That's your quarter ounce piece at $5.45. So 2010 on a 20, $545 on fives. Right now, $10 gold really hard to get. So stick with the 20s or the fives because the premiums are just better there at 800-951-0592. Dick's and Macy's, the latest retailers now saying, yeah, we're not doing that holiday hiring thing. Huge cuts. Remember, Walmart said they were going to hire like 60% less people. Dick's and Macy's, exact same thing. Huge reductions. And it was funny, Jason, what they were saying is, hey, we're already fully staffed. Normally, we're always trying to hire people because we always need help. But right now, we don't need any help. We don't need to hire that many more people for the holidays.
Because they're not going to need them, Joe. That's what a bad economy does. A bad economy means you need less people to work because there's not enough money for people to go out and spend and buy things. And the government has stopped giving out free checks, and the inflation makes it harder to buy the things that you need every day. So there's your recipe. This is just the facts.
Just the facts. Just the facts. Another one of these signs. How about this? And this is, again, a week delayed. Mortgages. Refinancing now down 84%. I'm surprised there's any refinancing going on. Down 84%. Refinances are now at a 22-year low. Which is hard to believe. How could it be lower than during the housing crash? But yet here it is. They went on to say that mortgage applications to purchase homes is now down 30% year over year. And again, these were interest rates between 6.25% and 6.5%. They're even higher now. So a third of the housing market, and I really think we're going to see before this is over, probably 50% less mortgage demand. It most likely going to happen. This is just again a huge problem. As I said this morning, a 30-year fix got to 708. By the way, they're now saying the average American, you got the average income, and you buy the average house. So that would put you right in the middle of middle class, right? Hey, I'm not upper middle class. I'm not lower middle class. I'm just middle class. just to get a loan at these rates, and this is, again, rates have gone up since then, you would need to spend half of your disposable income just to be able to make the mortgage payment, Jason.
I think the refinances, Joe, are actually in the next bunch of months is going to go up. You'll see refinancing go up with the higher rates. There's two reasons. I think the refinances that you were questioning, why would anyone do it? Well, I think some people are cashing in on equity. And I think even
they need the money, right? They need the money.
Well, or they just like, hey, my house might be down $200,000 in a year. Might as well grab the money. The other thing I think is people running out of money. They have nowhere to turn, and it's cheaper interest rates than a credit card. That's what
you know
it is.
what? That's probably exactly what is left out there. People just tapping equity while they still have it. But it really is stunning when we look at pending home sales. Really now approaching, and this is the scary part, it's approaching the housing crash. It's amazing that it could be that low. But again, another one of those indicators. And when you've got to spend half of your income just to make the mortgage payment, the math doesn't work. The math doesn't work. You're just going to be a renter. You
know why the emergency is not as big? As you say, it's approaching the 2007, 2008 crash. I think the reason the emergency isn't as big is because this time there's buyers, Joe. I think there are some big buyers that are going to scoop up these houses as they go lower in price. They didn't have that in 2008, 2009. The banks were insolvent, so they couldn't buy up that cheap houses right away. They had to be bailed out. So there's buyers this time, Joe. They won't put a lot of attention on it. The houses prices will go down, but there's buyers for this stuff, Joe. These foreclosures happen, and all this stuff that's getting ready to go on. It
hasn't happened yet. Like I said, it'll be interesting. We don't know if there's buyers or not because people haven't lost their jobs yet. People, listen. Right. You bought a house in 2018, 2019. You should be doing a dance. Right? You locked in at super low rates. Housing prices went up. Now, housing may come back down to where you bought it in 18 or 19, but the rates are so much higher. But those people, right, we've essentially said none of those people can move, right? You can't move because the payments are going to be so much higher. It really is going to be dependent on whether or not or when we start seeing job loss. Then it's going to be interesting. But to your point right now, hey, home purchases are going to keep falling. Doesn't necessarily mean it's like 2008 because people are still making their payments. That's the big difference.
Correct. And that'll payments not being made as the market gets worse will go up, and foreclosures will go up, I think, Joe. I think all that will happen. But like I said, if the banks if they're not in the emergency situation they were in 07, 08, it just changes the whole aspect of how big the emergency in housing would be. It'll be different. It sure feels like a big takeover, Joe. I think a lot of people with these low interest rates, when they don't have money, they're going to cash in on this equity and go into a higher rate because most of these people think, what's my payment, not what my interest rate is. The payment seems to be the big thing for most of these families, Joe.
Yeah, again, that's what everyone does, right? They more payment shop than anything else. When they go buy a car, what's my payment? Right? It's not, how much is it? Right? Well, what's my payment going to be? Because I can afford $500 or $700 or $1,000. Same thing with a mortgage, right? You buy, people buy the most house they can afford, right? Hey, I can afford a $2,000 mortgage payment. Well, here's the problem with that. Well, that payment doesn't exist.
Correct. I think.
Hey, I'm sorry. That house doesn't exist. There's not a house cheap enough at a 7% interest rate to get you a $2,000 a month payment, right? That house doesn't exist.
So I think people are deciding when they need the money, how much more of a payment can I afford to put, let's say, $30,000 in my pocket or $50,000 in my pocket, Joe. I think that's the decisions being made right now. Hey, I need a slush fund. Things look bad. Inflation, right?
800-951-0592. Again, gold's been up $25, $30 all day so far today. $20 gold 2010, $5 gold at $5.45. 800-951-0592. We'll be back right after the break. 800-951-0592. Just Gold's up 30 here, 1655. I think it's got a long, long way to go. Just got hit with a huge price increase. We're going to keep the price that we promised, 2010 on 20s, $30 higher coming this afternoon. Just get in now, 2010. These fives going much higher tomorrow. Right now, 545 at 800-951-0592. If you're just joining us, we had a major collapse in liquidity in England, in the bond markets in England at about 5 o'clock this morning. It spread all throughout most of Europe and Asia. Most central banks had to intervene in the markets. In England, they had to immediately stop quantitative tightening, went right back to quantitative easing in a massive bailout of the bond market there. It just tells you everything's on a knife edge here. We've been reporting all day about how Wall Street is thinking this is going to stop the Fed's rate hiking cycle. I see no chance of that. Not until we get that demand destruction. Stan Druckenmiller, to Jason's point, was probably being kind, but just flat out said, listen, we're going to have recession in 2023, not garden variety, and I'm not saying it's he did say, hey, this isn't my base forecast, but I would not be surprised at all if we have a very hard landing, and that's exactly what we're going to need to get inflation down. And, think about this. We got a major hurricane, almost a Cat 5, getting ready to make landfall in Florida here like any minute now. And Jason, we're not even talking about it.
That's correct, Joe. And listening to that piece, I could tell, like, probably his friends and guys that know him, and maybe people that listen to him a lot, you could tell he was saying depression without saying it. He just wasn't bold enough.
Because this is how important he is. If he had said those words, that would have made the crisis that was happening this morning worse.
Well, right, and I could hear him saying it without saying it. That's kind of the point. Yeah. He just wasn't bold enough to say it, which I guess you're right. I guess he has responsibility, to not scare the markets, I guess. But, when is somebody just going to say it the way it is?
And again, this is what happens when you run these house of cards. They've only, they talk about they've got all these tools. It's the same tool. It's the debt tool. And look at what happened. And this is what I said about gold. Wait till the Fed cries uncle, and they're going to cry uncle here. I think in the next 6 to 9 months we're going to get an uncle cry, and that's when you're going to see gold go to the stratosphere, because they're going to have to cry uncle without inflation being contained. And matter of fact, someone brought it up yesterday. Hey guys, why don't you just forget about the 2% target? Why don't you raise the target? Could you imagine, which I think is going to happen, by the way, could you imagine a 4% target?
I'm wondering if they're going to be able to get it to
5.
I'm wondering if
5%.
Can they get it to
target.
4? Are they going to be able to get? That's the whole point of this situation.
I don't know if they can, but just saying it, 5% target. That would mean every 10 years your money's worth half as much.
Yeah.
Now, they said no, but again, let me tell you right now, they're only going to say no until they have to say yes, Jason.
Joe, I don't think they can say 4 right now, because I don't know if they think they can get it to 4 anytime soon. I think 4 is going to be their goal in the future. I think you're exactly right. I don't think they could say it out loud, because how long is it going to take them to get it there? Their own heads at some of these branches, like New York, they said 6.8 in June next year. 6.8 in June. I think that was being maybe optimistic, too. Who knows how bad. If this inflation is really getting out of their control, Joe, that's why I think they're being very quiet about when they can take the rates down or when they can print money again. I think they can't say anything, Joe, because I don't know if they can control it.
Stan Druckenmiller let the cat out of the bag, because we knew about the strategic oil reserve. I've been telling you guys about this for, a couple of months. This is just a mirage. And look at what happened in Phoenix this morning. You get gas this morning, $4.50 a gallon, $4.49 a gallon. Maybe the cheap station, maybe you're at $4.39 and rising. And oil's only at $81. Crack spreads have exploded. The oil markets are like, listen, you paper Wall Street guys can say oil's $80 all you want. We can't buy it for that. But he let the cat out of the bag that Janet Yellen and the Treasury has been playing a trick to offset, right, as the Fed has been tapering, right? They're selling all these bonds. The Treasury loaded up its balance sheet, and she's basically been running it down in an idiotic policy move, running it down, and they're going to run out of money. And now she's going to have to start borrowing again, Jason, and putting even more pressure on Treasuries.
That's right, Joe. It's definitely a situation that is. Once again, it's the timeline, Joe. How bad is it going to get, and when do we get there? Because it's an ongoing situation. It's not going to end, but when's it going to get bad, and how long does it take to get there? That's the only question I have in my mind, Joe. Is can they have a slow grinding crash, or is this going to be something all at once really bad? Regardless, I mean, anybody listening to these
for slow,
yeah.
And again, this is the problem: is it's slow until it's not. And now we have central banks operating in emergency mode. The amount of intervention in the last, say, 5 business days from central banks, we haven't seen this since right before the financial crisis. I mean, the signs are everywhere. Figure it out. Get your assets protected. By the way, gold's at the high of the day now. It's almost 1660 and rising. Final segment coming up. 800-951-0592. I'll honor this price for about $5 more right now. Gold's up 35, 1660. Once it gets above 1665, we're just going to have to relent here. Prices continue to rise. $20 gold, 2010. $5 gold, $545. 800-951-0592. Currency markets disrupted, bond markets disrupted everywhere. But Jason, listen to this announcement, this just breaking. I'll get it here. Hold on a minute. The Bank of International Settlements has announced that they have concluded their month-long pilot program testing multi-jurisdictional central bank digital currencies. The project, known as M-Bridge, was a complete success. They had central banks of Hong Kong, Thailand, China, the United Arab Emirates, along with 20 commercial banks doing testing on central bank digital currencies. And the Bank of International Settlements said it went very successfully. Kind of ironic that this day is when they make this announcement.
Yeah, it's basically in place. I mean, 97 or 98% of all money in America, for example, is all digital anyways. It's not that big of a leap. It's that last 2% that they're having the problem with, Joe. But once they get that nailed down and whatever the crypto system they're using works, it's already over with. So I'm sure it's already in place. All this testing is just because they want to make sure that they don't make a huge mistake and make things worse.
Yeah, and of course they gain the tracking. That's the big game, right? They're going to have itemized tracking with it all, and of course now their ability again. I think, get ready. I've said this in the past. We got like 4,000 banks. We'll be lucky if there's 400 when it's all said and done. The need for banks are going to go away. I think most people that really don't have a lot of money, which is the majority of Americans, they're just going to have an account at the central bank. And then commercial banks, you'll go there when you have a lot of money. You're a millionaire, you're a billionaire. People will use it for car loans and maybe credit cards, stuff like that. But the need for traditional banking is going to change drastically with all of this, Jason. And of course, that it allows them to accomplish whatever policy they deem fit by essentially denying you access to credits or blocking you from purchasing X amount of things. We know we've gone through all of this.
Yeah, I mean, how many decades have they really been preparing us for this? I mean, when you go to some grocery store or like some department store, and they have that big wall of those cards for those. I don't know. I lost the word. The cards where you put $20 on it and for Starbucks. You know, hey, I don't want to buy a gift for Christmas.
Yeah, the gift card.
Gift cards has been preparing us for this for decades, Joe. I mean, look at it. That's how many people just completely use those things, especially for gift giving, and for people that are poor that don't have accounts. They've been learning how to do gift cards, haven't they?
Man, I'll tell you, it's just this is a tough day here. Again, the bond market in England got out of control this morning. A major crash was in the process. Jim Cramer this morning said it was going to bring down the NASDAQ, which is kind of odd, but the Bank of England had to step in, and then it was just followed by a wave of other countries all stepping in here. Get your assets protected. 800-951-0592.